A little under the weather, buddy? Okay. All right, here we go. Today we want to be able to graph tangent and cotangent. And we start with this. Let's look at the circle of life. Where's tangent positive? You remember? Positive? Yeah. So if you look, tangent is positive in the first and the third. It's negative in the second and the fourth. So here's the first and most important point that you need to learn today. Tangent and cotangent do not take 4 quadrants to repeat themselves. They just take 2 quadrants to repeat themselves. So you can see that tangent goes from positive to negative, and then right away it starts over. So instead of taking 2 pi, it just takes, so the period is pi divided by b. For tangent, if the a value is positive, then it goes up. If the a value is negative, then it goes down. It's actually opposite for cotangent. I'll show you that later. If a is positive, it goes down. If a is negative, it goes up. And I'll show you why. Oh, yeah, you guys will do great on this. Everybody will get A's. For the horizontal shift, again, you solve bx minus c equal to 0. Now, we're not going to apply really any horizontal shifts today, but if you did have to do it, that's what we do. It's really not that important moving forward. I can't think of any situations that we do within calculus or times where you want to graph tangent or cotangent shift it horizontally. So let's talk about the general graphs. And as I look at the general graphs, I have to consider these coordinates right here, okay? This is the coordinate 1, 0. This is the coordinate 0, 1. This is negative 1, 0. And this is 0, negative 1, okay? We said tangent repeats itself every pi. The period is pi. So I'm going to mark out pi. And with sine and cosine, you divided that into how many parts? 4. But because it only takes 2 quadrants to repeat itself, we just divide it into 2. Okay. Tangent is y divided by x. So please look at the terminal points that I've listed up here. As I start at 0, if I did y divided by x, what would you get? 0 divided by 1 is 0. Move to pi over 2. 1 divided by 0 is undefined. And we've had that before when we learned to graph rational expressions. Where is that function undefined? At 2. So we had a vertical asymptote that went through 2. So because tangent is undefined at pi over 2, we have a vertical asymptote. Now I'll move to pi, which is right over here. 0, because 0 divided by negative 1 is 0. And it will repeat itself on the other side. Whoop. Now let's think of the shape. Again, the x values will refer to our angles. And if I have a very small angle, remember tangent is y divided by x. Is the tangent of a small angle going to be a small number or a big number? Small number, because tangent is like the slope, right? And the slope of a line that looks like that is going to be very small. And so as you move to the right, you continue to get a very small value. Okay? Let's move closer to pi over 2, or 90 degrees. What's the slope going to be there? Really small or really big? Really big. So therefore, as you move closer to pi over 2, the values become ridiculously large. And this is the type of curve that you get. Some of you will say that you want to, that this looks like a cubic. It does to some degree. However, there are some stark differences between that graph and a cubic. Here's the graph of a cubic. First of all, a cubic heads on forever in the x direction, okay? To positive infinity, negative infinity. This is bound between negative pi over 2 and positive pi over 2. Second of all, it flattens out as a triple root at 0. This does not flatten out at all. In fact, it just so happens that the slope of this curve at that point is the same as the a value in front of tangent. So in this case, I could draw it with a slope of 1. Now, I'm not going to be critical on that, but I do not want you to flatten it out like that, okay? So it will continue to repeat itself like that. Where people get into trouble when they draw the graphs, people will sometimes draw these tangent graphs like this. I hate that. Don't do that, okay? I loathe that. I very much dislike that. Hate's pretty strong. Okay, cotangent is different. Cotangent will repeat itself every pi. Period is pi. Probably not opposite, but rather reciprocal. As we think of the reciprocal, we're going to have to think this through just a little bit. So cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. That means we take the tangent values and we flip them upside down. So for example, at 0, tangent is 0. What is the reciprocal of 0? Undefined, right? Because 0 would be 0 over 1. The reciprocal of that is 1 over 0. So you can see that 0 and undefined are reciprocals of each other. So therefore, because tangent is 0 here, cotangent will be undefined at that spot. Where else is tangent equal to 0? Pi. So cotangent will be undefined at pi. Well, let's look at pi over 2. Tangent is undefined at pi over 2. What's the reciprocal of undefined? 0. So tangent is equal, cotangent is 0 at pi over 2 and at negative pi over 2. Now let's look at our graph. Tangent, as I move just to the right, is the tangent graph, is it a large value or a small value? It's a very small value, isn't it? What's the reciprocal of a very small value? Very large values. For example, 1/100th. The reciprocal of 1/100th is going to be 100, right? So the cotangent graph starts way up here, okay? It starts up at a large value, and that's why. People wonder why it starts up like that. They say, well, because it's opposite. No, it's not opposite. It's the reciprocal, okay? Opposite would be like positive and negative. It's not too bad, is it? So this is the part that people have to remember for the test. And I have this written on your notes, but this is the most important part. The period is what? Pi. Tangent is equal to 0 at the period. Every pi value, it's equal to 0. Whereas cotangent is undefined at the period. See the difference? And if you can remember that, you won't have any problem graphing these. If you flip to your very last page, you can see that in the notes for tangent and cotangent, I have that written there. Lolly is yawning. She thinks my class is boring. It's okay. No, Callie's yawning. I'm sorry. I'll make class exciting. We're going to graph tangent and cotangent. Whoa! All right, here, let's do it. 4 problems and you can have your assignment, okay? Sketch a graph following tangent of pi x. What's the period? 1. Pi divided by pi is 1. Very good. So I mark off 1. I mark off negative 1. I divide that into how many parts? Why only 2? Yesterday I did 4. Tangent repeats itself in 2 quadrants as opposed to 4 quadrants. Is tangent equal to 0 at the period, or is it undefined at the period? So I mark 0 at all the period spots. That means it's undefined halfway in between. It is positive tangent, so it will start down and it will finish up. How about the next one? What's the period? Very good, it's pi. Divide it in half, I get pi over 2. And negative pi over 2. Again, tangent is equal to 0 at the period. Period is pi because I take pi and divide it by the number in front of x. Vertical asymptotes halfway in between. Is this graph going to start down and finish up, or start up and finish down? It's going to start up and finish down because of the negative. The 2, you don't have to try to show that in the graph, but if I were to be more careful, what I would do is when I drew this, I would try to have a slope of negative 2 as I pass through. See how I made it a little bit steeper? So that would probably be a more accurate graph. I won't be looking for that as you make it, but if you want to get technical with it, that's what we're doing. Okay? All right, 2 more, and then you can have your assignment. We have cotangent of x over 4. What is the period? How'd you get 4 pi? Pi divided by 1/4 will give me 4 pi. I mark off 4 pi. And negative 4 pi. I divide it in half. Is cotangent equal to 0 at the period, or is it undefined at the period? It's undefined at the period. Question? No. All right. That's fine. So it's equal to 0 halfway in between. Let's start up and finish down. What's the period for the last one? Pi divided by pi over 3 would be 3. Divided in half. Is cotangent equal to 0 at the period, or undefined at the period? Undefined at the period. It's equal to 0 halfway in between. Is this going to start up and finish down, or start down and finish up? Start down and finish up. As you consider entering this information in your calculator, you don't have a cotangent button on your calculator, do you? So instead of doing cotangent, you do 1 divided by tangent, or in this case, because it's negative 2 divided by tangent. And then you can plug in the pi divided by 3 times x, and that will graph cotangent for us. In my window, if I choose x minimum to be, say, negative 3, and the x maximum, we'll go negative 3.1. and then positive 3.1, and then the scale to be every 1.5, x min, negative 6, positive 6, sure. So we'll graph it, and you can see here, does that appear to be an accurate graph? I would say so. That's how you can check your work as well. I have the answer key ready to go. Anybody want to give a shout out to some of our missing people? Dana, Casey says hi. Ella, we hear you're skipping again. Lolly's had it. She's sick of it. She's unfriending you on Facebook. Brody, wake up. Carter, stop throwing things. Tristan, go to the office. How do we settle this place down?